The mess hall of the GSS Frontier Dawn hummed with its usual cacophony of alien dialects and the clatter of various feeding implements against bowls designed for a dozen different physiologies. Lieutenant Nira Solon sat alone at her usual corner table, methodically working through her protein rations with the same mechanical precision she applied to everything else in her military life. She had chosen this station assignment precisely because it was remote, because it was quiet, because humans were still a novelty this far out in the Galactic Coalition's frontier territories. Here she could exist in the comfortable silence that had become her armor over the past 3 years of service. The other species gave her a wide berth, not out of hostility, never that. The Coalition prided itself on unity, but humans carried a reputation that preceded them like a shadow. Deathworlders, they whispered. From a planet so hostile that its dominant species had to develop pack-bonding instincts just to survive their own childhood. Endurance hunters who could track prey across impossible distances. Beings who saw danger and ran toward it instead of away. Nira knew the rumors. She'd heard them in a dozen languages across half as many worlds. She never bothered to correct them. Easier to let the mystery stand than to explain that she was just tired, just wanted to finish her tour, just wanted to go home to a planet she barely remembered anymore. The Vakrian family sat 3 tables away. She'd noticed them when they'd transferred aboard 2 weeks ago. Matriarch Kess with her sleek, rust-colored fur and her mate Torvin, along with their 2 cubs. The Vakrians were predators from their clawed feet to their tufted ears, apex hunters on their homeworld, now serving as security officers aboard the Dawn. Their species had earned their place in the Coalition through their tactical brilliance and their unshakable family bonds. The cubs, Rak and Sira, were barely knee-high to most of the adult crew members. Their fur was still downy soft, their fangs not yet fully grown. But their eyes held the same keen intelligence as their parents', tracking movement across the cafeteria with predatory focus. Those eyes had been tracking Nira for days. She felt their gaze even when she didn't look up from her meal, felt them watching her during shift changes, studying her in the corridors, following her movements with an intensity that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, not in fear, but in recognition. One predator acknowledging another. Today, something shifted. Nira was halfway through her synthetic steak when she heard the soft padding of paws on metal flooring. The sound was nearly drowned out by the ambient noise of the cafeteria, but her ears, those remarkable human ears that could distinguish a footstep from 50 feet away, picked it up instantly. She looked up. Rak and Sira stood beside her table, their small bodies vibrating with barely contained energy. Their parents were still seated across the room, watching with expressions that Nira's translator implant couldn't quite parse. Concern? Curiosity? Pride? The cubs didn't ask permission. With a synchronicity that spoke of shared thoughts, they leaped. The cafeteria fell silent. 400 beings from 100 worlds stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped moving. All eyes turned to watch as 2 Vakrian cubs climbed onto Lieutenant Nira Solon's table, with the confidence of pack members claiming their rightful place. Nira froze. Her hand remained suspended over her tray, fork halfway to her mouth. The cubs circled once, twice, before settling down on either side of her plate. Rak to her left, Sira to her right. They tucked their paws beneath their bodies and began to purr, a deep rumbling sound that resonated through the table's surface. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the back of the hall, a Threxian dropped their eating utensil. The metallic clang echoed like a gunshot. Nira's translator implant worked overtime, picking up fragments of whispered conversations in a dozen languages, actually touching her. Cubs know something we don't. Pack bonding. It must be. Deathworlders recognize each other. Slowly, carefully, Nira set down her fork. She could feel every eye in the cafeteria on her, could feel the weight of expectation pressing down from all sides. One wrong move could cement every fear, every rumor, every whispered warning about humans that had ever circulated through Coalition space. She looked down at Rak and Sira. They looked back with eyes that held no fear, only trust. Absolute, unconditional trust. Something cracked inside Nira's chest, something that had been frozen solid for 3 years of lonely duty shifts and isolated meals. She thought about pack bonds and family units, about the human instinct to protect the young at any cost, about how her own species had survived by caring for their offspring long past, the point when any other animal would have abandoned them. Nira reached out with one hand. The cafeteria held its breath. She scratched Rack gently behind his ear, right where she'd seen his mother grooming him yesterday. The cub's purr intensified, his eyes closing in bliss. Sierra chirped, an actual chirp of delight, and headbutted Nira's other hand, demanding equal attention. Nira laughed. It was a sound she hadn't heard from her own throat in months, rusty from disuse but genuine. She gave Sierra the attention she demanded, and both cubs melted into puddles of contentment on her table. Across the cafeteria, matriarch Kess stood. She walked toward Nira's table with measured grace, and the crowd parted before her. When she reached Nira, she placed one clawed hand over her heart in the Vakrian gesture of deepest respect. "My cubs," she said in carefully practiced standard, "have chosen well. They see what we adults have forgotten to look for." "What's that?" Nira asked, her voice rough with emotion she couldn't name. "Family." Kess's whiskers twitched in what Nira had learned was a Vakrian smile. "May we join you, Pack Sister?" The word hit Nira like a physical force. Pack Sister, not officer, not human, not Deathworlder. Pack. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, as Kess and Torvin settled at her table. As conversation gradually resumed across the cafeteria, as Rack and Sierra continued their purring from their claimed positions, Nira realized something profound. She had been so focused on keeping everyone at a distance that she'd forgotten the one thing that made humans truly dangerous, truly unique in the galaxy. They didn't survive because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most heavily armed. They survived because they loved. And sometimes, on a frontier station billions of miles from Earth, love wore fur and climbed onto your table uninvited. Nira took another bite of her synthetic steak, one hand absently stroking Sierra's soft head. And for the first time in 3 years, she didn't eat alone.